Hello everyone, my name is Irvin, also known as Kumpelman. Welcome to Network Administrator Interview Preparation video. This is actually a second part. The first part we went through the first 5 questions, and this is the second part in which we're going to cover another 5. So this is basically based off my video that I've made previously, which didn't really go into details, just kind of gave straight answers. But for example, this next question that we're going to talk about and explain in more detail is about UDP and how many people really know what UDP is and how it functions. And for those reasons, I'm going to go into detail. If you like this type of stuff, please like, leave a comment, and also subscribe if you don't mind. Thank you so much, and let's get into it.
Can you explain what UDP is?
UDP stands for User Datagram Protocol. Unlike TCP, UDP is constantly broadcasting a connection signal which can allow for faster connection speeds. With TCP, you have to wait for connection confirmation, which takes time. UDP sends out data without consideration of what is receiving it, sort of like radio signal. Alright, so let's get back to this just backwards a little bit so we can see on the video itself what it stands for. So it says here UDP stands for User Datagram Protocol, and it says unlike TCP, UDP is constantly broadcasting a connection signal which can allow for faster connection speeds. So the reason why UDP is faster is because it's constantly broadcasting data, and it doesn't need an established connection for it to work. It's just constantly sending data. And the reason it's compared to TCP is because TCP is an established connection. In case of TCP, you have an IP address that is established by a DHCP server or provided by DHCP server, and there are rules. The connection is established, and of course TCP also tries to resend dropped packet data. So for example, let's say you're sending a signal and you're connected over TCP IP, you are sometimes dropping packets. TCP will take time to resend those same packets that it saw that they dropped, meaning data that's being sent. Let's say part of the data is not sent. It fails. TCP will try to resend that, and for those reasons it's actually slower than UDP because UDP is constantly sending data. So what are some examples of UDP? UDP, for example, is used in data streaming. Like you watching this video right now, it's using UDP. Why? Because YouTube is not concerned, or just any streaming video, right? Any streaming media is not concerned about dropped packets because it's constantly sending data. So it's constantly sending data in multiple packets of the same kind. And for those reasons, because it doesn't have to wait for the confirmation whether the packets was received successfully or not, it can send this data constantly, and just keep sending it. This is why it's used in streaming, because it's faster, because there's a sheer amount of data, meaning there's a lot of data being sent when you're sending a video. It's also used for streaming music. It's also used for when you're gaming online or anything that is of that type of sort where you don't necessarily worry about dropped packets, because that data is going to be resent anyways. It's going to be resent anyways, and it's going to be much faster because it doesn't have to wait for confirmation.
What is the loopback IP address?
The loopback IP address is 127.0.0.1. As part of troubleshooting network connections issues, it is used to test network interface card for functionality. If you ping this IP address and it completes successfully, it means your hardware is okay. Alright, so let's do a demonstration of loopback address just so we have a really good demonstration of this. So if I pull up a command line here, I'm going to minimize this video here so it's not in the way. And if I do ping, if I type in ping, so what was it, 127.0.0.1, it's going to receive a response immediately because this is your loopback IP address of your network adapter. This tests to see whether your network adapter is working. So this is just a loopback IP address to confirm that. And we can also double check to make sure that this indeed is the case. The way I'm going to prove it to you is I'm going to pull up system information here just to show you the name of this computer. You can see that this device name is Stream, right? It says here device name is Stream. It's also known as host name, computer name, workstation name. It depends whoever is using whatever. It's all the same. It's the computer name. It's the computer name of the computer that you're using, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to type in ping 127.0.0.1. But before we do that, we're going to insert -a or -a in front of it. What does this mean? This means you can use an IP address when you're pinging something when you can do a -a in front of it when you ping the IP address to get a response of the information of the computer that's using that IP address. This is used in troubleshooting when it comes to DNS issues, whether that computer indeed is the one that you're trying to ping. And I'm going to further explain this. So if I do ping -a 127.0.0.1 and I hit enter, it's going to say that the computer name is stream. That means that the IP address is that. So it means it's looped back and it's going to get that. So here it is. It says here ping stream 127. So that confirms to us that that is indeed the loopback IP address for our computer, for which is the name stream, right? So here's an example of what else. So let me let me ping another computer that is called Kobuman, right? So I'm going to type in ping Kobuman. And here's the IP address for Kobuman, right? Here it is, right? So if I want to double check to see if the DNS is correctly working on my local adapter, all I have to do is just copy this IP address. And we've done it just previously. I'm going to type in ping -a, and I'm going to copy that IP address. I'm going to hit enter. And now it's going to confirm to me that indeed Kobuman is using this IP address, meaning that computer name that's called Kobuman, right? And here it is, right? You see how it confirmed right there that it's pinging that, although I typed in the IP address of it. Although I pinged the IP address, it's confirming to me that indeed the Kobuman is that. But again, the loopback IP address is just to confirm that your network adapter works, and it's looping back and it's referring to your computer. You're like basically you're pinging yourself. You're pinging your own computer by using ping 127.0.0.1. I think I said, did I say too many zeros there? Anyways, it's written on the screen. You get it. All right. All right, let's move on.
What is DHCP?
DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. The main function of DHCP is to handle distribution of IP addresses on a network. IP addresses assigned by DHCP server are dynamic, meaning that they are leased and released dynamically. To explain it further, if you connect a PC to a network, it will get a leased IP address, and if you disconnect or move the PC, it will be assigned a different IP.
What?
So, DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, I've made videos on this many times, and for those reasons I'm going to take a clip of it and actually show you a DHCP server and tell you how it's actually functioning. I feel like that's the best way to go about it. Yes, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol is assigning IP addresses dynamically to the computers that are connected to that network. It's whatever's connected first is going to get the first available IP address. Whoever connects second is going to get the second IP address that's in order, right? So if IP address ends with 1, it's going to get number 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, and so on and so on, unless it's like a reserved IP address. Anyways, I'm going to insert the clip of the DHCP server and show you how that's done. So we're going to just maximize this, and we're going to expand here where it says server new domain. This is basically our DHCP server, and underneath it are what they're called scopes, and we got two different scopes, which is IP version 4 and IP version 6. So let me just expand this and explain to you what a scope is. In a nutshell, a scope is basically the IP address range that you're going to use for your DHCP server. So in the nutshell, if I was to, for example, right-click IP version 4 and I select new scope here, we can set up a new version of IP range. So let me just call it new IP range. Okay, I'm going to call it new IP range, and here it is. We're going to start, we have a starting IP address, so we can say 192.168.1.0. We can start with that, and then we can end the IP range with, for example, 192.168.1. For example, 100. So you'd be able to assign IP addresses between these two ranges, between 0 and a 100. So between 1 and 100 actually. So, and then you can just leave it like that and create a new scope. I'm going to cancel out of this because I've already created a new scope. right? So the reason it's called new scope is because, when you look through a scope, for example, like a, looking glass, right? You're looking glass, whatever's inside of that looking glass, like a circle, that's what in this case scope means. So whatever's inside of that, in this case, it's the IP range. So if we look at the address pools here for an example, we can see that here is our starting IP address and this is our ending IP address. So this one is from 1 to 100. It says here address range for distribution. So these are the IP addresses and aka IP range that's available for us for this specific scope. And you can have multiple versions of different scopes, so you can keep expanding on this. This is used to organize an organization. So let's say you have a certain part of your enterprise that wants to be under this IP range, then you would create a new scope for it to keep track of it, right? So it's for tracking purposes and also for organizational purposes, right? And you can do the same thing for IP version 6 here if you wanted to, but we're going to concentrate with IP version 4. It's explained in the same way, so I'm just going to stick with that. Next thing is address leases. For example, here is what you see a client IP address, and it's just called new. But what this is, and usually would say, is how long a address is leased for that computer. So what do I mean by that? Each computer that connects to the DHCP server is going to have a certain duration of how long that IP address is leased to them. Meaning this is how long this computer can have this IP address before it's renewed, unless you create reservations. Now, what I'm talking about, ones that are regularly dynamically assigned, I'm going to have to find an example and I'm going to have it come up right now so you can see an example of dynamically assigned leases. And since these are dynamic, and if you happen to come across a computer that has multiple dynamically assigned IP addresses and there is a problem connecting that computer to the network, you can delete those. Okay, but always double check with your coworkers if you don't know what you're doing. But again, make sure they're not reservations. So if they're regularly leased IP addresses, you can right click and delete them. Why? Because they're dynamically assigned and the computer will get a new IP address. All right, I hope you liked that explanation. Again, I have plenty of these videos and I highly encourage you to go through my channel and check them out. There's some really good stuff there.
What is FTP and port used?
FTP is a file transfer protocol used to transfer large files between computers with built-in ability to pause transfer of data. Ports used by FTP are 20 and 21. So file transfer protocol is simply used to send files back and forth. Like let's say you're uploading something to the internet, it's going to use FTP. Well, in some cases secure FTP. For example, if you're uploading a video to YouTube, it's going to use secure FTP, but you don't necessarily have to use a secure FTP, but you are used, right? So in this case, they're just talking about regular FTP, file transfer protocol in general. And this could be related to anything. If they ask you about it, you can say, well, it's for uploading things to the internet, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's uploading stuff to OneDrive, whether you're uploading your picture to change on your Facebook or whatever, if you're sending data to your Instagram or something like that, it doesn't matter. It's going to use a file transfer protocol. It might be secure file transfer protocol, so there will be SFTP, but if we're talking about just regular file transfer protocol, then that's what that is. You're simply sending files.
What is SSH and port used?
Also known as secure shell, is used to establish a secure connection between devices, which can be anything from computers to switches. For example, you can use SSH at a cafe and connect to any device anywhere by establishing a configured secure shell tunnel between two devices, making the connection secure. Port used is 22. So what is SSH in a simple way to understand, right? We know it's called secure shell, but it's used to create a secure connection between two devices. It could be any two devices that support SSH and they have also port 22 open or active to use SSH connection. So usually when somebody says SSH, well, they're probably referring to some kind of command line that kind of looks like CMD, but it gives you access to that remote server or a computer, a lot of times used in creating a connection to, for example, a Linux server that you're trying to connect to. You could also use PuTTY or any other, I want to say, command line type of interface, akin to CMD, similar to CMD or PowerShell. So let me show you some examples of that. I'm going to go to images. I want to show you a window of that. I use SSH for my website, SSH example. I use SSH to access my website and make changes on my website. And this is what it looks like. When you establish a connection, it looks something similar to this. And if you look at, for example, on this one here, it says C users HP dot, and it says it's using SSH connection to connect to this IP address. And here it actually specifies, you have to specify a password, and you can see that it's connected to a Ubuntu server that has LTS, a version of it. It doesn't matter. You can see that once you make a SSH connection, now you can log into that server, and it's encrypted because it's secure, using secure shell. Now you can make changes to that computer, and you can see some examples of what's happening on this remote server or a computer. Anyways, it's a Linux platform, and you can see that this person browsed to their desktop version. It says C directory desktop, and once they navigated to that, you can see they did ls to list to see what's there, and then they use cd to move down a folder, and now they're trying to go to C directory downloads and then do ls for a list. Anyways, they're browsing, and they can make changes now since they have SSH connection to that, and everything is a command line or command prompt or whatever it is that you see here. I don't know what else you would call it. I use a command line or command prompt. It doesn't matter, but typically that's what it's used for, right? And you can use some kind of terminals to connect to it. For example, PuTTY can be used to connect to a terminal window, but in the end you're looking at something similar to this. You basically establish a connection, and then you're just typing away and making changes, and that's what SSH is typically used for. Hence, the video itself talks about making a connection between devices, which can be anything from computers to switches. Yeah, some switches you can also connect to, like I've said already, and you can connect to any device anywhere by establishing a configured secure channel tunnel between two devices. So you could be sitting anywhere in the world and connect obviously to whatever else uses SSH, and then you can just connect to it, right? There you go. All right, so I'm going to leave it at that. That's the 5th question in this video series. If you want to see more, please let me know in the comments below. I apologize if this is a little bit shorter video. I just don't necessarily have that much time this weekend. I apologize, but I will try to make more time for the next weekend. So I hope you don't mind. Yeah, this is what I have for this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and also share with your friends that are also trying to get into IT. All right, take care. Bye-bye.